Hello, it's August 2022, and this video is inspired by a conversation I recently had with someone when I was trying to explain something to them, and I'm explaining a few things, and they ended up asking me if I was ever a teacher. And in fact, I said, well, yeah, I've been a teacher to some degree on different topics, different levels. And I've even had people comment, say, for example, on my videos, how my videos are very educational, like from that angle, very instructive. So I thought I would just do a real quick video about this part of my life, nothing to do with law or the mental health industry or whistleblowing, exposing, or anything like that. I'd just talk about the times in my life that I was a teacher. So I suppose this goes back to when I was a teenager, a young adult teenager, and I taught martial arts. And, you know, I'm just thinking back now how interesting it was, an interesting time for me. And I mostly taught more advanced students, and I remember having to teach beginners and children. And that was probably the most embarrassing part of that, my experience with that. Because you get to a certain point where all the basic things you kind of forget about because you just become second nature. You don't think about them. And then trying to explain to someone, for example, you know, just a basic fighting stance. I remember standing there feeling really stupid having to think about it. You know, it's just like, okay, get into your fighting stance type of thing, and, you know, people are trying to figure that out and then trying to explain to them a fighting stance and the different types of fighting stances and all this other stuff, right? I'm simplifying all this. And I remember thinking that I'm a complete failure. Now, my trainer, who put me in that position, thought it was kind of humorous, and he said, this is good for you because now you're going back to your roots, to the beginning, and having to remember everything. And, you know, even how to throw a punch or a kick or something, you forget all the basics, and it just becomes instinct. So it was a learning experience for me, having to go back many years to my beginnings and kind of relearn everything, but not really. And I remember there was a few students, one in particular that really stands out, who really wanted to mimic my fighting style because I was into full contact. Well, that's what they called it back then in the 80s, full contact. And I was heavily into Muay Thai, did Roman Greco wrestling, and a bunch of other different things. And I was also into bodybuilding at the time too. And this one particular student, there's a few that they wanted to mimic me, and I got so angry because I'm thinking, well, like, you know, why? And they would watch me like from afar, not to interfere with my training and stuff, and sparring and stuff, but they would try to mimic my fighting style. And my trainer said, take that as the greatest compliment, like the form of compliment, because when someone tries to mimic you, they're trying to be like you. That's, I mean. And I never thought about that. And I got to keep in mind I was still a teenager myself, so I'm just kind of like, okay, and that kind of stuck with me. So that would be the first time, I guess, that I really formally taught anything. And then after that, I became a fitness instructor. And there's a bit of a story to that, how I became a certified fitness instructor. And a lot of the people who would be obtaining these kind of positions usually have degrees behind them, or they're students, you know, learning something in that field. And I seen they had a job posting. So I was in my late teens at the time, and I was already researching and stuff about the human body and human kinetics and everything else. So I had an idea. So I applied, and I already knew training and diet and everything else. And I remember the one girl there, she said, well, this is what you got to do. And there was a few of them standing there going to school to learn. You got to write an exam. So, okay, what do I have to learn for the exam? So I don't think they took me seriously, but they told me some books, wrote down the names. I went to the bookstore. First time in my life that I ever bought a book. And I bought books that, university level books. And I'm not saying that I went through the books and understood everything and all this other stuff, but I went through the books and extracted as much as I can. Fast forwarding, skipping over the boring parts. So I ended up writing the exam and I passed. I even passed with basic nutrition, basic injuries, and then the actual working out stuff I did very well at. And they were kind of surprised. So anyway, long story short, I got the job. And I would go around teaching people how to work out. And I remember there was one young guy who wanted to learn how to bodybuild. And now when you go in to a gym and have a personal program set up, it's basically just kind of cookie cutter, really. I remember telling him, because he was really, I want to bodybuild. And so I said, listen, come and see me when I'm not working and not working out. And, teach you how to bodybuild. And he did. He came in and we'd tell usually after I worked out, and I would tell him. And I hadn't seen this guy for years. Now, he was younger than I was. Probably, I don't know, 15, I'm guessing. Hadn't seen him for years. And I ran into him in the gym. I was already in the gym working out, and he walked in, and we recognized each other. We smiled, nodded, and he was with a girl, I'm assuming a girlfriend. And it was really interesting to hear him tell her things. It appeared to me that he was teaching her how to work out, and the words and terms and things that I said to him years prior, he was telling her. I was just sitting there on the bench, just in between sets, and I just thought, wow, somebody actually listened. So that was kind of cool. With that, so there's the martial arts, and then there was the fitness instructor at a gym, and then I suppose the next time I taught was actually as a supply teacher, or in the United States they call them substitute teachers. And that was kind of interesting, being a supply teacher, because I did kindergarten to grade 8. And I have a whole bunch of stories, which I'll just share some of these stories because I think they're kind of cool. There was one time, for example, I was teaching kindergarten, and I remember after a few classes of that, the kids would run up and grab my leg and hug my leg and say, "You're the bestest," and they had pictures drawn and with my name, Mr. Meriden, underneath. And it was like kindergarten cop. That's how I kind of felt. And then I had to read a storybook in the library in front of the classes. And I remember telling the other teachers, like, I'm terrified. Now, by this time, I was already getting my feet wet, so to say, in law. I was going to court and stuff. But in the beginning, it takes time to build up your own practice, your own business, right? So I would do this when I had the opportunity. He would call at 6 in the morning and stuff. So anyway, I was terrified reading. I just remember the book was about a turtle. That's all I remember. And I got through it. And the teachers after all said, you did really well. And I'm just like, wow, I can go into a courtroom, packed courtroom, argue a position in front of a judge, not even sweat, but reading to a bunch of little kids, that was scary. And then there was another class that I taught. It was like I guess what you call in the old school terms, the trouble class. And there was one student. I remember before going in, a couple of the teachers said, that kid there, you got to watch him. He's going to cause trouble. I'm like, okay. So during the morning class, he'd get the class all riled up and everything else as I'm trying to teach something. And I remember that was history. I was teaching history. And I explained to them, I said, who here likes history? And everyone booed and whatever. And I said, well, who you were yesterday is who you are today, and that's your history. And who you are today is who you will be tomorrow, type of thing, and kind of builds up. I explained it a lot simpler and better. And so that's history, but what we're learning here is the history of the world, type of thing. Now, I'm not going to get into the accuracy of what we know as history, but anyway, this one young guy, he was on the right hand of the class from my perspective. He'd get the class riled up every so often. So recess was on, and I said, I want to talk to you before you go out. And everyone's, kind of chuckling, oh, you're in trouble. And he walked over with his head down, expecting me to give him trouble. And long story short, I ended up explaining to him that he is a leader. He controls the class. Even competing, for example, with the teacher, because the teacher has control of the class, but he was able to, and his type of person is able to take that control away from the teacher and get the other kids to laugh and stuff. So I explained to him, I said, you can be like a CEO of a corporation, a business. You can do anything you want. You have control over other people. Anyway, long story short, chewed up the whole recess, and the other kids were coming back, and I said, go out and, have your recess. And so I started teaching. I could see him through the window, and he just kind of walked in circles a few times and came back in. And then I was like keeping an eye on him, and then he just watched the class. He'd act up a little bit and then just watch. And he was probably thinking to himself, yeah, maybe what I'm saying was right. It was some time later that I went back to that school, and somebody said, oh, the principal wants to see you, and go to the principal's office. And I remember thinking to myself, I haven't heard that in a long time. So I went to the principal's office thinking, what did I do? I think that's kind of drilled into you in childhood. I don't know how it is now, but you go back to the 70s, it was a lot different world. And they wanted to congratulate me, and the teacher of that class was there because they knew I was coming in, so she wanted to talk to me. And they were congratulating me because they said that young boy changed for the better. And we had this little conversation, and I just explained to them what I just explained here in this video. And yeah, he changed his whole attitude and everything else. He apparently got more into studying and everything, and perhaps seen a greater value in himself. Now, there's things that when this young boy and I were talking a little bit really quick, and things that I learned I'm not going to disclose here. But so there's a little bit more to his story, obviously. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's good. I helped somebody, right? And then there's the other time when I taught French class, and I don't know French. That's a different story. So that would be the next time that I taught officially. I actually was a card-carrying teacher and I supply taught. And then over time, I just couldn't, they'd call in the morning. I was just too busy. My law career was just moving really fast, and that kind of. The last class that I taught, I just got to throw this in real quick. It was a history class, but grade 8. And I remember walking in, saying to them, do you want to learn history or do you want to learn law? Because I knew about that age, you're going to start learning how to drive soon. So I brought my Highway Traffic Act books and everything else, and one of the kids to my right, I said, my father? And his father was a prosecutor. And I said, oh yeah, I know your father. And that was a fun class. But anyway, so that would have been another time that I taught in my life. And then fast forwarding to that recovery world, I ended up doing seminars with prime and subprime lenders, the top banks and everyone else, how to do debt recovery using litigation, but more on not on a one-off, but more of on a larger scale simultaneously. And so I was teaching banks and stuff, and I guess there was other people too that weren't even credit grantors wanting to learn. So that'll be another time that I taught. So yeah, I'm just kind of skimming over this part of my life, teaching. And I never really thought about it until I had this conversation with the person. I was like, well, yeah. And then I started thinking, well, yeah, I was martial arts, fitness instructor, etc. And really enjoyed teaching. And I always thought supply teaching would have been my backup in life, that, you know, something that I could just always fall back onto type of thing. But thanks to the city of Calgary and all the nitwits out there, they completely destroyed that opportunity for me. So, but it's interesting now that I'm thinking about it as I'm talking, the different lives that I've impacted, not just through teaching, but just overall. I've shared stories about my interacting with homeless people, like people who are actually sleeping on the streets. And well, so I never really thought about it, and again, I'm not thinking I'm anyone special or anything, but and this person, just to close off, asked, you know, when I was being complimented, say with that young boy, how did that make me feel? And it didn't really make me feel anything. I was just kind of like, you know, it's kind of cool, but never really thought about it. Just, I guess I just go through life, you know, from one event to another, whether events are good or bad. It's just kind of like, okay, next, and just get through life that way. So I never really reflect on anything, good or bad, for really too long, and whatever. Anyway, I thought maybe you'd be interested in hearing this part of my life, more little it's more positive, more upbeat, and yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.